It's because she was old and her hands were weak and frail. No, I'm kidding. The Titanic is one of the best movies ever. Top five, top five, top five. And not to mention, it was based on a true story. And it encompassed a beautiful love story within it. And it had incredible visuals throughout the entire film that depicted the ship in a grand state. And considering the fact that this movie came out in 1997, it makes it even more impressive. It can compete with some of the best movies made today, visually and conceptually. Did you know that the Titanic was once the largest ship known to man for a long time? But it has since been outdone by a newer, younger model. Stay tuned to the end of the video to find out who kicked the Titanic out the #1 spot for the biggest ship ever. As said within the film, the blue heart diamond is the actual real piece of jewelry that was once owned by Louis XVI. Now, obviously, Louis XVI was a collector of fine jewelry. Allegedly, it was a part of his crown that he adorned himself with during his rulership. According to Google, this diamond will be worth around $500 million today. The largest blue diamond in the world is currently in the Smithsonian Museum in Washington, D.C. But I'm unsure if this is the same diamond. I do know when it comes to museums, they use a lot of replicas. It's not always the original artifact that is being displayed for everyone to see. So, why did Rose drop the blue heart diamond into the ocean in the Titanic film? In my opinion, the blue heart diamond represented a traumatic chapter in life for young Rose. She had unhappy, young, spoiled, rich girl problems, and she wasn't in control of her life, and that really boiled her rice. And ultimately, it made her feel hopeless. It was obvious that she felt unheard and unseen, as if she was screaming silently. I especially saw this acted out in her suicide attempt, a sign that she felt really hopeless. As far as her feelings for Cal, her fiance, she felt he was a jerk, a controlling a-hole that only wanted her for aesthetic purposes. Rose didn't want to be with Cal. She was betrothed to him in order to sustain. You see, Rose's family's wealth was like a sinking ship. My bad, Titanic, no pun intended. But her mother said that they no longer had money, and all they had was their good name. So they were trying to attach themselves to Cal to stay afloat and still live that lavish life. And in the meantime, hoping that no one would notice that they no longer had money. I would probably be really sad and feel really hopeless if my mother tried to put all that pressure on me and sell me and then tried to make herself seem like the victim along the way. You know, honestly, Cal really wasn't that bad of a fiance if you think about it. Now, don't go thumbsing down my video. Hear me out. He showed Rose many times that he cared for her and his concern and wanting to provide for her. Yes, he was toxic and abusive, but let's remember, guys, these were the early 1900s. Most women were getting slapped around for rolling their eyes or slamming the plate down on the kitchen counter hard. And Rose was like blatantly disrespectful to Cal. To be honest, he actually held back a lot on her. Oh my God, I'm sorry, YouTube. But I'm just saying. So can we just cut him some slack? Cal treated her like she was a valuable piece of property. And ultimately, I think that he could see that Rose's demeanor showed that she didn't really care about him. She didn't really care for him at all. But Cal continued to try to buy her love with his money. And honestly, I still feel like he really wasn't that bad. Even though Cal, Spencer, and the iceberg were portrayed as the villains throughout the film. He gifted Rose the heart-shaped diamond as another attempt to buy her love. When he gave her the blue diamond, he told her, "There's nothing that I wouldn't give you if you wouldn't deny me." So even though she was his fiance, Cal didn't feel in his heart that she was his. Truly. Cal knew he didn't have Rose's heart. And on top of that, for a little poor low-life boy to take his woman, that must have been a real blow to his ego. Now, I have a question for you all. Would you rather stay with a person that you didn't love, but they had money that you could grow to learn to love over time? Or would you rather go off with a person that made you feel happy, alive, yourself, heard, seen, but they had no money and no real source of stability? Which one would you pick? Let me know down in the comments. All those years had gone by and nobody knew that Rose had the blue heart diamond. Not even her granddaughter. And she seemed to be her caretaker at the time in her old age. But she did say in the film, a woman's heart is like a deep ocean of secrets. Rose once described the heart-shaped diamond as overwhelming. I think that's because for her, the heart-shaped diamond also represented how she truly felt about her fiance. And that whole time period in her life, it was a real eye roller for her. And when she threw the heart-shaped diamond into the ocean, you could see a sense of relief came across her face. There was no regret. It was no accident. And maybe she brought the necklace with her to make sure it sunk in the same area as the Titanic so it could feel like a symbolic therapeutic experience for her. You know, ultimately bringing her a great deal of healing, you know, a real woo-saw kind of moment. It seemed as if Rose went on to live a regular life without the money. She finally married. It also seemed like she didn't regret living life as a regular person without the wealth. After all, she didn't know what it felt like to have tons of money and still feel miserable and suicidal. So I'm assuming that she was happy without the money, and I'm sure that it helped that she was no longer being bossed around and forced to live a life that she didn't want, finally having her freedom and all. But why did she just give the necklace to the treasure hunters? She could have just given the treasure hunters the necklace, but I guess she thought to herself, no, I don't want anyone else to have it. It's mine. And what it symbolizes carries too much trauma with it. And all I truly want to do is to drop all of that trauma to the bottom of the ocean. Shaking my head. Whatever happened to one man's trash is another man's treasure? Maybe Rose didn't get the memo. But no, seriously, I think a part of her wanted the heart-shaped diamond to die away with all the painful memories of her life at the time. The diamond was a representation of a point in her life when she wanted to commit suicide and that horrific sinking of the ship happening. And on top of that, the loss of the infatuation of her life. I think it was more than her dislike for her fiance that made her throw it into the ocean. After all, she was 101 years old. I'm pretty sure she was over that relationship at that point. But like I said, the trauma that Rose felt at that time in her young life, it was probably extremely depressing. The treasure hunters were so sweet and patient with Rose because they acted like they wanted to hear all that other stuff. But really, they just wanted to hear about the blue diamond. But she just had to talk about her fling. And she just had to talk about how she was suicidal. She just had to talk about getting it on in the back seat of the car on the ship. But she really could have just jumped to the part where she received the necklace when she was wearing it in her birthday suit and the last time that she saw it. As a side note, do you ever think about those poor staff members amongst the ship? Imagine dying at work. That has got to be a cruel fate. We spend so much time as a people selling our souls to these jobs day in and day out. We should not have to die at work. Now, according to Google, more than 100 years ago, the Titanic was the largest cruise ship on the water. But today, a ship that is twice its height and twice its width is the new queen of the ocean, 5 times bigger than the Titanic. With 20 decks, the Royal Caribbean Symphony of the Seas is the world's largest cruise ship. Can you say Titanic who? No, I'm kidding. No, no shade, Titanic. You are still the greatest. You are still the queen. Even though Rose gave a convincing performance of accidentally dropping the diamond into the ocean, it was no accident. It was therapeutic for her. It was the last way for her to let go of her past hurt and tragic trauma that she went through and no longer wanting to hold on to. Like, talk about waiting to the last minute to do your assignment, Rose. I'm only kidding. Throwing the diamond into the ocean, it was obvious that Rose had come to a point in her life to where she didn't value materialistic things anymore, which is bittersweet. But if I'm the treasure hunter, I'm somewhere thinking to myself, bruh, I'm sorry. I just thought that was crazy how she got onto a boat just to have a little therapy session and not to help. It seemed like she just wanted to talk to somebody that would listen. You know how old people can be sometimes. No offense. There are so many treasures on the bottom of the ocean floor that people have lost or dropped or been shipwrecked and left behind. I could only imagine. And you got Ariel out here. She could be picking them up, but instead she hoarding eating utensils and door keys. Oh my God, how irritating is that? Anyway, thank you for watching this video. And if you enjoyed it, don't leave my channel just yet. Check out this next one.